Today we turn to Naples, Italy, and her artistic ascendancy. As early as 1860, his influence had begun to be strongly felt at Naples, and had given a distinctly new tendency to the work of the painters immediately about him. By 1865 he had begun to draw pupils to his studio from all the southern provinces, and by 1875 the flocking of young men to him for instruction surpassed anything which had been seen in Italy since the days of Canova. In 1880 the jury at an Italian art exhibition issued him a diploma, in which they pronounced him to be the leader of Italian art, Caposcuola dell'arte italiana. And it is sufficiently significant of the really exceptional distinction which he enjoyed to say that, in a country like Italy, where artists spring up on every hand like weeds in the soil of an over-rich garden, and where professional jealousies are as rife as they are among the artists of any national group in Europe, no one can say that the jury exaggerated his importance, or that the rank bestowed upon him was undeserved. Morelli had not attained his position without encountering his full share of the difficulties which usually fall to the lot of artists. The story of his childhood and youth is the story of a continual struggle against hardships and privations. Domenico Morelli was born in Naples in 1826, to parents belonging to the humblest class. The real name of the family was Soldiero, and this was the name by which the artist was known during his boyhood and until he adopted by his own choice, at about the time that he began to rise into prominence at Naples, the name by which he is now known. Both his father and mother were wholly uneducated and could neither read nor write. They kept no record of the dates of the birth of their children, and Morelli has never known the month, much less the day when he came into the world. His mother had hoped he would become a priest. However, his precocious talent was noted, and he happily enrolled at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Naples from 1836 to 1846, where he befriended Francesco Altamura, another strong talent from which he benefited while a student. Morelli was highly productive. His early works contain imagery drawn from medieval stories and romantic poets such as Byron. From 1845 to 1846, with the help of a generous patron, the lawyer Ruggiero, he won a fellowship to study in Rome. From 1847 to 48, he painted 4 major works, mainly of historical and religious subjects. Morelli was immensely influential in the arts of the second half of the 19th century, both as director of the Accademia di Belle Arti in Naples, but also because of his independence against stringent practices of many institutions, traits that flourished in his passionate, often patriotic idealism. Morelli had just returned to Naples when the insurrections of 1848 erupted in Naples. He joined the protesters in the barricades at Toledo, was wounded and nearly killed, then briefly imprisoned. He would be labelled as one of the warrior artists of Italy. After being released, Morelli returned to Rome. He participated in the Universal Exposition in Paris in 1855. After this, his style would begin to turn more and more toward the freer spotting of form, as can be seen by his drawings of pen and ink. These drawings expressed the use of surrounding the form with accents as opposed to delineating the shapes, as the French system promulgated so well in the école schools of Paris. On closer inspection of the marvellous technique and use of ink, and transferred in paint, to express form, by working around it, there is an overall description of the whole as opposed to the section-by-section rendering common in the northern European schools. And while both have a distinctive power of their own in relating to nature, it is the tantalizing effects of spattering spots carefully orchestrated to express form that gives the Italian and Spanish school its unique charm. It was Henry Regnault that would exclaim it, in his visit to Rome, where he would meet Mario Fortuny, who dazzled him with this new way of seeing. Morelli would adapt his own work toward the newer method and excel to where pupils throughout southern Italy made their way into his studio. The next few years were comparatively uneventful. Profiting from the improvement in his circumstances which he owed to his pension, Morelli pressed for the hand of the Signorina Virginia Villari, and in March of 1851 the marriage took place. Pasquale Villari, the brother of his wife, had for some years before this been Morelli's most intimate friend. He had helped the artist with gifts of money during his difficult times at Rome, and Morelli won a stipend from his Prix de Rome award. His romantic visions immediately regained possession of his imagination for pictures the moment he felt himself free from the surveillance of his academic instructors, and he chose as the subject of his picture a passage from the Bible, in Acts, the conversion of St. Paul, who while making his way to Damascus was blinded by the light, and given his instructions by Christ as to what he was to do. This magnificent painting has all the elements of the finest in picture-making. The glow of light, with the expressed blindness of the future apostle, is brilliantly portrayed, and the figures well placed in the background give us the immediacy of the action taking place, Paul's groping toward the viewer. But more important to the painter's eye is the consummate design, strong diagonals that emanate from the heavenly light source toward Paul lying prostrate to his tensed, outstretched arms, giving all the action of his desperation and confusion. The expression is very well painted so that the narration is complete and skillfully drawn. In turning to the masterpiece painting by Morelli of St. Anthony the Great, of Egypt, we have the story as follows. Anthony was born from wealthy parentage, but after their death he gave away all his earthly possessions and decided to live an ascetic life. During his time alone in the Egyptian desert, it was said that the devil tried to seduce the saint by offering him all kinds of temptations, food, drink, demons who confronted him, and women who offered themselves, and it is this period in the saint's life, known as the temptation of St. Anthony, that the picture is based. Morelli gives a more delicate version of the temptation. The saint is sitting in his cave while women taunt him as he agonizes quietly. The painting from 1878 is a popular one and very striking in composition and emotion. Morelli has given us a well-designed canvas, featuring a dramatic story he is well able to pull off. The starkness of the cave strikingly and tonally flows from darkness into the light, contrasted by the silhouette of the dark-robed saint. Morelli would return to biblical themes till the end of his life and contribute to illustrations as requested, interspersed with paintings of everyday life to include the Orient, with their colourful apparel and customs. Another painting of interest, and one that Morelli chose to paint entirely of his own interest, is one known as the Bagno di Pompeii, or the Bathhouse of Pompeii, is almost unique in the whole list of his pictures in having no literary subject. He proposed to himself in this work simply the task of painting the interior of the caldarium of a bath of the Roman period, and concentrated all his efforts upon the accurate rendering of a peculiar effect of light, the room being illuminated from a single window placed high up under the curve of the vaulting. It also further demonstrated his skills with the figure under difficult light sources. The picture was purchased by the Commendatore Giovanni von Willer of Naples, whose name is frequently mentioned in the list of Morelli's works. Commendatore von Willer deserves mention, and prominently, because he had so large a share in making that career possible. It has been frequently the case for artists to have one, or a few, important persons that have made careers possible in a difficult arena. To continue our narrative, we should mention that at just about the time of which we are now speaking, soon after Morelli's return from Milan, he took an active part in the formation of the Independent Society of Artists, which was organized at Naples to promote their movement in art and protect the interests of the painters who were connected with it. The project for the formation of some such society had been under consideration at Naples for some time, which led to the movement's finally taking definite shape. The society was called the Società Promotrice. Its primary purpose was to hold an annual exhibition to which works of art could be admitted without running the gauntlet of juried criticism. Morelli was urged by his associates to take the presidency of the society, but declined, and after his refusal, this position was tendered to and accepted by his friend Filippo Palizzi, the animal painter. The new society thus organized, we may say here, more than justified all the expectations that had been formed of it, and has continued to exist and hold its exhibitions annually down to the century's end. Upon Morelli's own processes of work, just at this period, some light is thrown by a few notes placed at our disposal, in manuscript, by the Cavaliere Francesco Netti, the Neapolitan painter and critic, who became acquainted with Morelli as early as 1855, and was in his studio in the years between 1860 and 1864. His observations confirm an impression that one would be likely to form independently from a mere examination of Morelli's pictures, and that is, that he was largely dependent upon moods, and could not approach his canvases except when the fever was upon him. The writer continues, "Morelli, according to my impression of him," Netti writes, "has never been what would be called a systematic worker. I have often seen him set his palette and make an appointment for his model in the morning, and then pass the whole day without touching a brush to his work. But I should add that by way of compensation for this lack of application, every stroke of the brush, when he actually got to work, was a final thing. It was the result of mature consideration and long internal debate, and was put on with conviction. It is this that explains his peculiar facture, which is broad and sure, sometimes excessively synthetic, and exhibiting a disregard for detail. It may be that the very hours which seemed to be given over wholly to idleness and to chatting with his friends were precisely the ones in which he gave the most thought to his pictures. I remember seeing him once enter his studio in haste after a long walk, and without taking off his hat or laying down his stick, sit down before his easel and rapidly finish a delightful sketch that was barely suggested when he began. His powers of observation must, it appears to me, have been very rare and unusual, and his memory extremely retentive of the colours and forms of objects, to enable him to reproduce them with so much fidelity after he had seen them only once. His multitude of bozzetti, or sketches, and he has produced some beautiful ones, furnish the most striking evidence of this exceptional faculty. For a number of years after his return from an expedition to Paris, much of Morelli's time was occupied with his pupils, and we think there is no error in saying that as early as 1870 he had become more popular as an instructor than any other master in Italy. He must have been, before this, urged to accept a chair in the academy, which had been reorganized early in the 60s, and its name changed to Institute, so odious had the word academy become. Nevertheless, it is true that almost all the more promising of the young men who were coming up between 1865 and 1875 took pains to set themselves down as pupils of Morelli. This is especially true of the aspirants for artistic fame from the lower Italian provinces. Among the artists now enjoying any considerable degree of prominence at Palermo or Naples, it is difficult to find one who does not claim to have come at this period under Morelli's influence. We find also that he attracted pupils from Rome, Florence, Leghorn, and even from Turin, Milan, and Venice. The most distinguished of his pupils is, without question, Francesco Paoli Michetti, who studied under him while he was a professor at the Institute, who we will cover in another presentation. Yet the wide difference between Michetti's manner and Morelli's is sufficiently significant of the latter's method of instruction. Nothing occurred after his retirement from the Institute to interrupt either pleasantly or painfully the even tenor of a very tranquil existence until 1888. In the latter part of that year, Madame Morelli died, and her death caused a shock to the sensitive system of the artist from which he did not rally for some time. We add mention here that 6 children were born of this marriage, 4 sons and 2 daughters, none of whom chose art as a vocation. Her daughter says, in speaking of her character and of the place which she occupied in the household, simply existed for him and for her children. In the following years, Morelli ultimately became one of the best-known Italian painters, appreciated for his exceptional qualities as a colorist and the dramatic effects that he managed to instill in his paintings. His long dedication to his pupils and in his own work provided him much acclaim. There is renewed interest in his work today, particularly among artists rediscovering nature and the joy of disciplined art creation through picture-making. As we end this presentation, we want to thank our subscribers. It means a lot, and remember to add a like, as it helps the channel to grow, and we look forward to bringing you many more artists of prodigious talent in the future.
And finally, be sure to click below and follow the link to find your digital library offers. We regularly upload some of your favorite artists and art movements, so just click below, and thank you till next time.